starting.
Okay, so thank you very much, Patrick and everyone, for joining me. Um, so I'm going to start today's topic, which is increasing adoption in Office 365 and Microsoft Teams. But I'll start with a bit of introduction. So first of all, my name is Omree, and I am Science Manager here at Cardiolog Analytics. So we provide analytics and engagement solutions for Office 365. We started about 15 years ago with SharePoint on-prem, and we grew with Microsoft into the cloud. And now we provide analytics for the entire Office 365 suite, including all versions of SharePoint and Microsoft Teams. We have global reach with customers from every continent and from every vertical. On my screen, you can see just a handful of our customers. And we envision the process of adoption in a few steps. The first is the monitoring part. We want to monitor and show every single action that's happening in Office 365. It's a very crucial part in adoption, and I'll get into that in a moment. But more so than that, we also want to see to engage with the end users, to understand their experience, and to let them know what features they can use in Office 365 that will benefit them. And we've seen how our customers have been able to leverage the analytics and engagement in enhancing their entire environment, making it more productive or just enhancing the overall collaboration. So just a short schematic overview of how this works before I dive into the topic itself. So first we have the data source. It can be any part of Office 365, as I mentioned. We use different capturing mechanisms, mainly JavaScript tagging and the Graphs API, to extract the data from the data source. After that, the data is being processed and stored in Microsoft Azure, and as you'll see during the demonstration, visualized and presented with Power BI. And now let's talk a little bit about adoption. So it's been said before, but I'll say it again. You can only manage what you can measure. It's very common that organizations don't have a concrete understanding of what's going on with their teams and Office 365 environments, which makes the adoption process much more challenging. Most organizations focus on the platforms themselves, adding new features, creating new content, and that's important and wonderful. But we don't know if the end users are actually using any of these features. So we are seeing many organizations putting time, budget, and effort and resources into all of these new features of Microsoft Teams and Office 365, and they're doing it while setting wonderful goals. They want to help their end users. They want to make the working environment more productive and easier to use. So there are a few questions that they just don't know. For example, what content is the most popular? Can they identify which content is not being accessed or used at all? So why do we need analytics to help with Office 365? So I just mentioned it, but let me say it again because it's so important. You can only manage what you measure. If we don't know what's going on in Teams or SharePoint or any other platform, we're going to see some of these challenges, like lacking in training, wasting storage space because we're using old, outdated documents, and struggling to encourage users to adopt our new and improved options, which we'll discuss a little bit later. By leveraging analytics, we are aware of how people are using the portal before we start the adoption process, and with it, we can set up a plan. Afterwards, we have an adoption baseline rate to see if the process was successful, measure if people are using the different features. We can see if adoption is increasing by measuring what's going on. And that's really the end goal, making sure that our end users are benefiting from Office 365, that they are more productive because of it. Organizations may also have determining what they consider a success in adoption. What are the right measurements that organizations should use? Determining the metrics of success is a key factor in the project. Based on these KPIs, an organization can schedule a whole process and react to changes, assess where they are compared to where they want to be, and what actions they should take to achieve their goals. So we can see some examples of KPIs on my screen right now. For example, 90% of end users have migrated to the new portal, a specific number of page views per week, or 80% using, for example. All of these metrics should be included in the success of an overall adoption plan. However, breaking these metrics down makes analyzing success and failure more actionable and measurable. By leveraging analytics, you can identify KPIs and uncover key insights about your portal usage before, during, and after your adoption plan. And it could be a part of a migration plan to Teams, for example, or to the cloud in general, or just as a project to increase overall productiveness in our organization. Here are some examples of more valid KPIs for different stages of a project. So before the project, for example, we want to measure the most and least popular content, teams, sites, communication aspects. During the project, we want to see which part of the new compared to the older version people are using, how they are using Teams compared to Skype or Slack. And after the adoption plan, we can measure the success because we have started with KPIs. We declared what are the options that will make the entire project successful. We know if it was successful and what we need to do to keep it successful for a long time. And pain points for business. So we can see many questions that describe different difficulties for organizations. Are people using the portal? Are users being more collaborative? And there are many challenges here, but I think that in one sentence, if I want to describe everything about challenges in adoption, it will be the resistance to change. Generally, people are tend to use what they have used in the past more than they are willing to move to new features. Basically, people are willing to stay in their comfort zone, even if less productive, even if it will benefit them less than moving to the newer version. But that is actually the greatest difficulty. How can we make an employee that has been working with the same platforms for a year, 5 years, 10 years, to move to the new platforms, to move to SharePoint Online, to move to Teams, which is a huge change to the organization and to the individual as well. So the question is, not only can we measure if people are using it, but what actions can we take to help them? So now I'll dive into the demonstration itself. What data can we get and how can we use this data? So right here, we are looking at Cardiolog Analytics, presented in Power BI, as I mentioned before. So on the left side of my screen, you can see different tabs. So each tab is a pre-built dashboard that all of our customers get from day one. So you don't have to waste time going through the data, creating visualizations, because everything is already set up for you. So although, as this is Power BI, everything is available for you if you want to create something new or to customize dashboards. So here in the usage overview, we can see some basic metrics like the percentage of active teams, and on the right side of my screen, the percentage of active members. We can see the number of teams that we have overall in our portal, the number of channels per team, and for example, underneath that, we can see the number of created teams through time. This is very important because on the one hand, we want to make sure that people have all of the teams that are relevant to them. We want to make sure that for every aspect of work, they'll have their own team to communicate. But on the other hand, we don't want them to have tons of teams. If they'll have 60, 70, 150 teams for every small thing, everything will be considered as spam to them. So we want generally to make sure that we keep a balance. We have enough teams for them to be productive, but not too much, so they will be overwhelmed and confused. So at the bottom of my screen, we can see this table. I just full screen it. So here we can see all of our teams on the left side, the name of the team, the owner of the team, number of members, and other basic metrics like channel, number of messages and replies that we have. So messages is a very basic metric to understand if a team is active. Because if they have obviously 0, but even if they have 2,000 messages in a team with over 970 users, we can understand that they barely use it. So either archive it, maybe it's not relevant, we don't need this team, or maybe we need to help the end user understand why they should write in messages in this specific team. And this is very basic. I think that everyone intuitively can understand the point of messages. But let's examine this metric, the messages with no response rate. That tells us that that we can see here that varies between 10 and 17%. So this is a bit more complicated because here we see that people are communicating, they are writing message, but maybe the messages with no response rate is very high, which means that although people are writing messages, a lot of them are just irrelevant or a bit spamish. People are writing for no reason. And again, if a team will have a lot of irrelevant messages, people will want to use this team and teams in general less. In this engagement overview dashboard, we can see many more metrics. So on the left side, you can see personal attributes like office and department. So we don't want to see personal information. Of course, we want to keep GDPR, but we do want to understand, are there differences between offices or departments? And of course, while we block personal information, it is crucial to understand the differences between overall attributes. We can see, for example, if you look at the top right corner of my screen, the access type. Here we can see if people are using Teams on their computer only or on their phone apps as well. This is very crucial in understanding how fluent people are in using Microsoft Teams, because we want them to use it on their phones as well. If it's just a single message, we want to make sure that people are contacting each other at all times, because people have different working hours. So we don't want them to go home and open their laptop and start working. But if it's a quick message, we want to make sure that they answer if it's on their phone, if it's something quick that they can do right now. And again, this tells us the level of fluency of using Teams in the organization. We can see the number of meetings and calls that we have through time. Obviously, we want this number to rise as time goes and as people use the meetings and calls feature more. And something important about this specifically and in general, if people are not using the meetings, as you can see, we only had 50 meetings in about 2 years in this organization. It doesn't mean that people don't talk to each other. It just means that they are talking somewhere else. So this is a very important difference. We want to make sure that we migrate people into teams, for example, if that's our goal. We want to make sure that they have meetings and calls with teams if it's something that they're working with. Because if they are already working in teams, we don't want them to leave teams going to other options to make calls. We want them to stay in teams, to be more productive. And another important thing here is that you can look at the top right corner of my screen and see a time scale that takes us between October of 2018 and August of this year. And I can modify this time scale to take a look at a specific period of time. And you just saw how the entire dashboard filtered itself to show me data for this specific time period or whatever time period I want it to be. This is very important in comparing the usage through time. So we want to compare it by week, by month. Maybe if we're talking about the real long run, we want to compare, for example, November of 2020 compared to November of 2019 to understand if we're having a progress. But not only a progress, but also another thing is that people think that adoption is a project that you can just run and finish, but it's not. Adoption is a constant thing that we want to take a look at, because as we introduce more features to our end users, as we create new options for them, adoption can decrease. So even if you reached your goal, whether it was 80% or even 90%, which is amazing, even then, if we look again in 6 months, we can see that this number has declined. So we want to make sure that we are keeping steady, that we are in touch with the end users, that they know what feature we introduce. Next, in the Teams overview, we can see, as you can see at the top of my screen, you can see that I can filter through Teams. So for example, I can choose this announcements team to see a bit deeper. But when we're talking about larger teams like this one, for example, that has more than 800 users, most of the action will probably not happen in the team, the general team, but in the channels themselves. So we can filter through those as well, take a look at something specific. This is very important because we want to make sure that we see the action where it happens. We don't dictate how our users actually use it. We just want to see where they go with it. And I do want to talk a little bit about the content in Microsoft Teams. So we've seen in the past 8 months or 10 months now, I guess, how everything that's happening with people transitioning and working from home, how it changed the overall way that people interact with work. So more and more people we see are using Teams as a gateway to the entire Office 365 system. So we want to see not only the messages and the calls, we also want to see the work. So we can see the content that is being shared in new tabs in each of the teams. We can see the attachments that people are attaching to each of the teams. And we can even see apps that are being shared and used on each of the teams. Very important when you're talking about of using all of Office 365 as one system. And another important thing that people don't tend to think about a lot is the top threads that have been started in our organization. So the thing about this is that we just want to have a general understanding of how people are using, what interests people the most. Um, because we want to keep up with them. We want to make sure that the organization knows what people are talking about, what interests them, and that we push to this direction. Or if we think that there's a valuable thing that is similar to this, we can also push to another direction as well. So I do want to dive a little bit into other Office 365 platforms, such as SharePoint and Yammer. So here we can see a bit of SharePoint Analytics. So on the left side of my screen, you can see the portal tree filter, which is SharePoint's hierarchy. Here you can see that we are monitoring multiple environments at the same time. So if you are, or your customer are going through a migration, or just generally are using a hybrid solution right now, we can monitor both environments at the same time, and it all goes into a single report, which is very easy to use and compare. So as this is SharePoint's hierarchy, I can drill down here all the way to the smallest libraries and lists to take a look at how people are using each of them. And we can see some basic metrics in this. For example, the content, the adoption, and search. So we can see here, for example, I can click on this and see how the entire dashboard filters itself. And this is one way to filter the data through the pages, sites, subsites. But let's say that your organization is very interested in a content type, like video or documents. So for that, we have the upper tabs as well, as you can see here, documents or videos or wikis. And the great thing about this is that you can choose multiple filters. It goes for Teams as well. You can choose multiple filters at the same time. So let's say that you want to look at a specific page or a specific site, and out of this site, you want to see a specific content type. So in this table, we can see some basic metrics about each of the pages, how many page views we have, the duration, last page views, and everything else you see on my screen right now. So by default, I'm showing the most viewed pages, but I can also go the other way around and show you the least viewed pages, or in this case, pages that have not been viewed at all. And now that you know that that's the situation, you can take action. Maybe archive irrelevant old pages that no one uses anymore, or maybe you can find out that a new page that you just spend a lot of time working on, or even a site that no one really uses because they don't know that it exists. So now it's your time to take action. Maybe surface it, let people know that it exists. And also, just as Teams, we can see the usage through departments. I already covered it, so I won't go deeper into that. So here we can see real-time usage. So that's a crucial part for some of our customers because they want to see at a specific moment how people are interacting with the platform. So for example, if they just uploaded a new video or sent an email to everyone telling them about a new site, they want to see how many traction it gains to understand what campaigns work and what campaigns don't work. And for example, what time of the day are more productive. So far, we saw basic metrics, page views, time on site, stuff like that. But as I said when I started this presentation, we want to see in-depth metrics. For example, the average depth of visit or the single page visit rate. So this metric right here tells us how people use the platform. If they only visit one page and then leave, we know that they only enter SharePoint when they get a link to it, which means that they are just not using it properly or not using it to its full extent. We want to make sure that people know how and why they should use SharePoint in this case. So all of these metrics can be kind of hard to quantify. I mean, okay, so this page has 50 page views and this page has 6. What is the bottom line? So I wanted to show you this dashboard that gives you exactly that, the bottom line. How much time and money are being wasted for misuse of Office 365 or SharePoint in this case. So on the left side, you can see different attributes like average salary in your organization, or for example, the, the storage cost per gigabyte per month. And we can see different reasons. For example, slow pages, which I'll discuss later, or for example, creating unused media content. We have customers that invested a lot of budget into videos, training videos. But if these training videos are not being viewed, this time and money are basically just gone to waste for no reason. So we want to make sure that we see this, that we know exactly the bottom line, how people use SharePoint in this case. Next, when we talk about search, we want to see at the left side of my page, what are the top search terms? And if I click on business data, which is the most searched term, I can see that business data has been searched more than 1,600 times. So 1,600 times 60 seconds per search, that's a huge waste of time for your organization, as you can see at the top right side of my screen. But the metric that actually worries me is the one to the left of that at the middle top side of my screen. That tells us that only about half of the people that searched business data clicked on any of the results, which means that half of them had to go and waste even more time searching for the answer elsewhere. We can also see the search result. So for every search item, we can see what results they're getting. And through that, we can understand how we can improve the overall search. And we can do that with engagement, which again, I'll talk a bit later. But let's go into slow pages. How long does it take for a page to load? These days, no one really thinks about it, right? Because we're talking about, half a second, maybe a second, if it's something very slow these days. But if it's something that happens over and over again, let's say that you have a page that has ton of content and now it takes even a second and a half to load. If it happens more and more on a single visit, then people will generally want to use this platform less. But not only that, when we are talking about larger organizations with hundreds or even thousands or users, we can see the waste of budget and time for just basically waiting for pages to load. It's something that we don't think about a lot, but it's very, very crucial. We can see visitor technology as well, what device they're using, the operating system and the browser, and the portal responsiveness. We can see the load time per browser, per device. Maybe there's a specific problem. And we can also, in this case, see it by geography, whether it's country or specific city, if you want to drill down. So far, we saw general information. We saw how pages perform. But we want to see what people do on each of these pages. So let's choose this home page, for example. And under the page elements column, we can see that this page has 3 elements. One is an input, one is a button, and one is a link. And how many times people have interacted with each of these. This is very crucial in the full understanding of how people use each of the features that we have. Because we don't just put sites, right? We put features on each of these sites with a cause, for a reason. We want to make sure that people use them or that we save real estate on the page. We can also see navigation. So how people move from page to page. For example, how people move from this page to the next page. Through this, we can understand what is the most likely visit. So if a person A visits to page B, then he goes to page C, then to page D, we can understand over time which pages need needs a shortcut, which pages are too complicated to reach. Maybe you need 5 or 6 steps to get to, and we want to save that for our end users. Because if we see a pattern happening over and over again, we can just assume that people are looking for this last page every time. And also external links. So many of our customers are subscribed to different resources that they think will benefit them, but they don't know if people are actually using any of these external links. So we want to see that. We want to see how many people has interacted with any of these external links. Maybe we should just unsubscribe, save some budget on things that people don't use. And now let's move to Yammer a little bit. So here in the first dashboard of Yammer Analytics, we can see in this graph at the middle part of my screen, the usage of Yammer through time. So we can see how many Yammer contributors, participants, and inactive and active members we have. We can see the device usage and through the departments. And at the top of my screen, you can see the Yammer groups themselves. I'll try and not mention things that I have already mentioned, but here we can see the Yammer groups themselves and all the basic metrics, conversations with no response rate that goes the same as Teams, and we can see the most influential users. Now I know that this is very important, and we can block all personal data in a situation in which you want it. You will not see names. You will see some sort of encrypted name. We don't gather the name if that's what you want. But something that is important, that even if we don't know the individuals that are using it, we do want to see how individuals use it. Not specific ones, but generally. Because here we can learn, for example, that only a handful of people are starting conversations for the entire organization, which means that people either don't understand why or how they should start conversations. And of course, this goes the same for Microsoft Teams. If only a handful of people are creating all of the messages, this means that people are either too shy, don't understand why, embarrassed to use Teams, and we don't want that at all. We want to make sure that people use it properly. So after viewing all this data, many of our customers approached us and asked, what now? Okay, so thank you for this wonderful data. I see now how people use this. But what actions can I take right now to improve the overall usage of my platform? So for that, we have created Cardiolog Engage. This is a complementary piece to the analytics that allows you to create a campaign to achieve any goal, whether it's promoting a page in SharePoint, notifying people about a new feature in Microsoft Teams, or just having a survey, letting people know, asking people for their experience. And let me, before I dive into exactly how you can create your own campaign from scratch, let me talk a little bit about this in a more broad sense, in a broader sense, excuse me. So as I mentioned when I finished my presentation before the demonstration, people tend to use the same things that they used in the past. So we can expect people to use something. And even if you just had a great training session, let's say that last week you had a training session and you see this week that the adoption rates have increased 50%, 60%, something crazy. We don't know that it will last for long because people still tend to go back to whatever is familiar to them. So we want to engage with them on a somewhat consistent basis. Not necessarily every week, but certain amounts of time periods that we want to explore the usage. Or let's say every time that we go below 70% usage in Microsoft Teams, we'll drive a new campaign. And let me show you how you can create your campaign and how you can make sure that a campaign is successful. So first, we'll choose the audience. Maybe it's everyone, telling them about the deployment of Microsoft Teams or a new team or a new SharePoint site or whatever it is you want to introduce them to. Or let's say that, for example, we've learned that a specific department or office are not really using their team. So maybe I want to contact them. So let's say that we learned that the marketing department are not really using Microsoft Teams. But maybe we don't want to contact everyone within marketing, only inactive users. So users who did not visit for more than 5, 14, or even 30 days. Next, we'll choose the channel. How do we approach these people? Maybe it's an in-app message, like a pop-up, as you can see here, that goes on their SharePoint page. Or let's say a header that goes on top of SharePoint's specific page. Or, for example, maybe they'll get a message in Microsoft Teams that leads them back into a Teams conversation with a bot where they can reply to a question. And I'll touch again on that a little later. But let's say that we're talking about people that basically don't use anything. They only use email and their phone. So maybe we'll just send a targeted email to these people, or even a text message. The great thing about this is that, for example, we had a customer that had a huge struggle in adopting the Microsoft Teams app to their end users. So they used this, so they saw who doesn't use the Microsoft Teams app. And again, we can block all personal data. So you don't have to see literally who it is. You just know that this person doesn't use Teams. So we can keep his privacy. So all of the people that are not using Microsoft Teams on their phone will get a text message with a link to download Microsoft Teams, and then another video training video of how to use this. And a week after or 2 weeks after, we can send a survey asking them, was it helpful? Or for people that didn't ended up downloading the app, maybe we'll send them a survey asking them, what can help you? So next, we can text and design this in any way we'd like. For example, new Microsoft Teams or a new team or just a question. We can write a description. We can design it in any way we'd like, change the color scheme, as you can see, and we can have a call to action. Maybe we want them to rate a new feature, this new team. We have multiple ways of doing that. Or maybe we want just to ask a question, get their full response. Doesn't matter if it's like this in SharePoint, as a message in Teams, as a text message, could be any call to action in any platform. And lastly, we'll choose the trigger. Maybe it's scheduled next Monday morning when we are deploying the new team, or maybe it's triggered by a certain action when they are scrolling down a page or interacting with any feature in Microsoft Teams. Or let's say that they are viewing a search result for more than 60 or 45 seconds. So imagine someone just searched business data, as we've seen before, and he's scrolling through the results, not clicking on any of them because none of them seems relevant. And while he's failing to find an answer, a pop-up appears on his screen asking them, what went wrong, or what are you searching for? And for summary, what's great about this is that I think that we all have been part of an adoption plan, some sort of an email routine that is being sent every week, every month, or whatever, as a survey asking, how's the search, for example, or how's the new site? And most of the time, people have so many emails to answer that they will just archive this email automatically, not even look at it. So we'll have very few responses. But not only that, usually it comes at a time that is not relevant. If I didn't find an answer 3 weeks ago for something I searched, there's absolutely no way that I'll remember it when the survey comes. So the great thing about this is that, oh, and another thing, actually, is that many times these surveys are not relevant because we don't know how people use the platform. So we just send them as a general email. And if I'll see an email asking me, why are you not using Microsoft Teams, or how are you using Microsoft Teams, and I am, I will just ignore it automatically and will generally not look at future emails from the company as well. So this tool allows you to send the most precise message at the most precise time to the most precise people, to make sure that you take the data and analytics that we just saw and leverage it into action as however you want it. Whether it's during a project, if you want to increase adoption generally, or if you just want to make sure that you keep your company afloat, you make sure that the adoption rate doesn't drop, that you keep introducing new feature and improving your platform while not settling for a lower usage rate. So first of all, thank you very much, everyone, for your time. I really appreciate it. And that's it for me. Thank you very much. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Omree. Est-ce que quelqu'un a des questions? Any question in French or in English? I have a short question for you, Omree. How do you position your analytics against Microsoft Basic Analytics?
Sure. So I think that there are a few features that we allow that Microsoft Analytics don't allow. First of all, the Microsoft out-of-the-box analytics are very, very basic. They will show you very basic reports, not nearly as detailed as ours. They don't go a lot into the specific features or specific groups of individuals. And another thing is that the out-of-the-box can only show you data for a certain amount of time, while we can show you data that extends a long time. So you don't have to see data for just a month. You can see it for multiple months, years. We have customers that are comparing data for 5 years even.
Okay, cool. We have a question in the chat. Do you see it, or do you want me to read it to you?
No, I don't think I see it.
So I can see the previewed analytics are more developed compared to Power BI usage analytics. My question is, does the tool require users' consent to collect all their data and show it in the analytics? What would be the case for invited users?
Sure. So as the concern for GDPR and our customers in Europe mainly, we have an option to block any attribute that you'd like. So obviously their personal name, but you can in advance say that you don't want to take the data for anything, any job title or department, really anything. So it's really up to you and the security protocols for your organization and how you'd like us to take the data. So if you don't want us to take something, we'll just not take it at all.
Okay, cool. D'autres questions? I think it was very clear. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.